My name is Melanie Marchant, and I'd like to welcome you all today to Zuhlke Show and Tell. We're really excited to share with you our learnings from the Phase 1 competition. Next slide, please, Charlie. But first, I'd like you to take a quick look at the Zuhlke team. We're a diverse, highly experienced multidisciplinary team, and we've brought together for the project a wide range of disciplines, right from data engineering, business analysts, experience designers, and everything in between. You'll be hearing from a few of us today. Next slide, please. We all know that lots of infrastructure will need to be delivered to deliver net zero and to modernize existing energy systems. We also know how vital the investor community is to this and any of this happening. And we're here today to connect them to developers, local government, and to networks. We're going to start with EV infrastructure, and we're proud to introduce to you EVIA, which will make it happen. Next slide, please, Charlie. So here's an idea of the challenge. There's a 6-fold increase in the current EV infrastructure rollout that will be required to satisfy this increasing demand. This equates to an additional 300,000 charge points that will be required by 2030 and also represents a significant investment. So we're not only faced with an enormous challenge, but it also needs to happen really quickly. Investors need to make decisions, and we believe that this community also needs to help them make them. By investor, we're referring to anyone needed to make a decision regarding an EV infrastructure installment. There are also a wide range of other benefits to people in the value chain, but more of this will come later in the presentation. Next slide, please, Charlie. Over the last 12 weeks, we've learned a lot about the challenges across the entire value chain after speaking with in excess of 50 different organizations. Some of these logos you can see listed here. We've learned that it's a really complicated landscape that investors are expected to navigate. And something which really stood out to us as a team is that it can take anywhere from 1 to 5 years for an EV infrastructure project to be delivered. We also have real fears that rural communities will encounter the same neglect that they've suffered with the broadband rollout, and that other areas may not be able to support tourism, which will really hurt their local economies. Through our research, we overwhelmingly heard that there is a need for EVIA and that investors would pay to use it. We've also built a working prototype, but more on that later. We conducted a lot of user research and have created a short animation to bring this research to life and to succinctly outline the key points. Charlie, could you play that, please? Thanks, Charlie. I hope you all enjoyed that video. We've also learned a lot through the research about the roles that the different stakeholders are playing and also their needs. As you can see from the slides, whether they're looking for return on investment, assurance about social equality, or about keeping costs down, they all need better information, and we really want to do something about this. Next slide, please, Charlie. Here's our Zuhlke mission. We all know how difficult climate change is going to be. We don't just want to be problem solvers. We want to make everyone's lives better. So that's why we've set ourselves all these challenges, and not just to address climate change. Accelerating EV infrastructure is how we'll be kickstarting our mission. And with the scene set now, I'm going to be handing over to Jonathan.
Thank you, Mel. I appreciate that. And if you could move on, please, Charlie. The users of our application, they are the people who are going to be buying it are investors, in infrastructure and developers of EV infrastructure, but our users are wider. So our users include local and regional government and also the DNOs themselves. So our investors are anybody that might be making decisions in investment cases to build, operate and roll out EV infrastructure. This picture here shows our value proposition of our application. On the left-hand side, what we are seeing is that there's all sorts of data in infrastructure, operational data, which needs to be pulled out. That's quite a dirty, messy job. Number one job for us is to move that out and clean it up and make it usable. The next job is to structure it so that other people can use it. And then the purple box is what we're starting to show is how we monetize what we are doing. So at the bottom, there are self-service data models that our users want. They want us to be able to thread together different market data from different areas so that they can use it themselves, add their own data, and then run their own IP on the top of it. Bespoke analytics, not all of that our customer base want to be able to do all the heavy lifting themselves, so they want to pay us for consulting services to do some of that data science work for them and drive insight for them. And at the top level, transactional insight. There's a lot of very common visualizations and type of an analysis that needs to be provided to all sorts of different users, which is common. And we want to provide subscription basis for at a low level cost for those sorts of transactional insights. But the most important people on this picture are our users, the people. And at the bottom there, we are showing an arrow there. Absolutely everything about what we are doing is narrowing the gap and reducing the gap between people and the data that they need. We're removing all the pain of finding the data and making it usable so they can use their intellectual property to go and do what they need to go and do. Next slide, please. So our users have validated two core things. On the left-hand side, what they validated with us are the features that they value most. And on the right-hand side, they've told us that these are the benefits they think that will drive most. So on the left-hand side, the one I'll call out there is the thing that they've seemed to really value highly about what we're doing is that we are a neutral broker. We are providing data in a trusted way, in a trusted format that makes it usable for them to use. They can go and do all the clever stuff. And on the right-hand side, we're talking a lot about commercialization here. I'm just going to stand up once more for rural communities and those the social areas. People think that we are able to surface the areas that are being unserved. Profitable areas are being served well at the moment, but it's the other areas that need to be focused on as well. Next slide, Charlie, please. So Zuhlke, we are a company which specialize, our day job is specializing in cutting through complexity, either national scale complexity or global complexity of issue. And one of the ways we do that is we drive a spike right through the problem, right from value all the way through down to infrastructure, and then we build our way out. The reason we do that is it helps us find out where the value is and where different values are that we can surface. That helps us plot forwards a way forward. We've absolutely done that in this instance with this competition, and we've taken real data, live data, and we have taken a very narrow area of geography so that we can spike all our way through with our prototype and understand where the value lies. Off you go, Charlie.
Yep, so I'm going to talk about the prototype application and how investors reacted to it. Many of those who we interviewed were keen to see how the application progresses and wanted to be involved as soon as possible, which is great. The first phase of our work encompassed the data discovery, where our prospective users showed that joining together data from 3 different sectors, which never usually get joined together, is where the value lies. That's electricity, traffic, and geographical data. Electricity data includes demand and generation from the transmission and distribution networks, including physical assets, their capacities, and other attributes. In this project, we used SSE were very, very useful and provided their data for us to use. This data ensures that users can find suitable locations on the network that work from an investment perspective. Complementing this is traffic data, which enables users to understand and gain insights concerning the demand for charging infrastructure, especially when combined with electricity data. And finally, geographical data furthers our understanding and enables users to understand the impact on local areas. Information such as land ownership reveals a wider picture, enabling users to find information quicker and rule in or out infrastructure locations. Feedback from various types of investors has given us confidence into our approach to data. And next, I'm going to show a prototype of our work over the last 12 weeks. We worked closely with Hightrans, which is a public sector transport partnership in Northern Scotland, and also with the University of Strathclyde. to produce a tool which solved their problem of placing new EV charge points in the Highland region, and it joined together the data from the 3 categories mentioned earlier. I'll just show the demo now.
Our proof of concept was built over the last 12 weeks and encompasses the spatial aspect of the proposed application. It's a simple design including all of the standard features you would expect from a geospatial application, including toggles which allow the user to be able to switch on and off raw and derived layers. Our delivery considers NCSC cloud security principles whilst adhering to GDPR requirements, prioritising data privacy and security alongside accessibility and inclusivity. Each of the 3 data categories, electricity, geography and traffic, are all represented in the proof of concept, showing how these datasets can be combined to support our users. We wanted to focus initially on a variety of datasets across a small area, so we focused on the town of Ullapool in the Highland Local Authority. We chose Ullapool because it's within the SSE North region. SSE is one of the DNOs which partner with us and supplied a variety of datasets. The village also has a number of interesting qualities, such as being in a rural area, having a ferry port, and having significant industry, which may make it a suitable candidate for substantial EV infrastructure over the next 30 years. For this demo, we'll look at a user journey from the perspective of a local authority user who wants to identify where EV chargers should be placed near the town of Ullapool. For a local authority, getting access to relevant data is difficult and time-consuming, so there's a high amount of value in both being able to gain insights quickly from derived layers, but also to explore a variety of data visually. Datasets such as points of interest allow the user to be able to understand where there may be land to add a charger, for instance at a current petrol station, a tourist attraction or a car park. One of the challenging phases of adding a new charge point is connecting to the network. The user can add the physical assets on the electricity network to the visualization to understand connection opportunities. Many new connection applications are subject to high costs and delays if network reinforcement is necessary, so it's important that the LA user understands which areas are at higher risk of network reinforcement. The user can switch on the connection areas heat map, which gives an indication to them which areas of land are a higher risk or are further away from the network. The areas that are higher risk are highlighted in red, or for those who may be colourblind, it's the darker colour. Users have mentioned how this would allow them to quickly rule out certain areas where they may not be able to afford the connection costs. There's a nice example shown just south of Ullapool, where we have the LA user can identify a caravan park, which is extremely close to a substation with a low risk of network reinforcement. Combining this with the traffic data, by clicking on this road segment next to the caravan park, we see one of the aspects which influences demand for EV charging at this particular location. The user can view traffic counts at this location across winter and summer, whilst also viewing trip length data. Assuming that 80% of EV charging sessions will be at home, it's important to understand for each of these road segments the distance that each driver has travelled by the time they reach this part of the journey, and this helps us to understand the charging demand at this particular point. We can also encompass ferry carrying statistics, which is actually a very important piece of information when we focus on Ullapool, where the local ferry port is the key connection to the Isle of Lewis. These road traffic statistics on the right hand side show a peak at the same time as the ferry crossings. And actually when we click and understand the ferry data further, we can see that there's actually in the summer there's 122 cars per journey. So imagine how backed up the charge points will be in Ullapool and the demand on the network will be if every ferry user wants to charge at the same time before crossing. This is definitely a problem that the local authority needs to understand and that they can use this application to really get to grips with. By bringing together more and more data sets, the use cases the app would be able to serve will massively increase. Obvious candidates are land registry data and population demographics, which would enrich this analysis further.
Right, so any questions or feedback would obviously be welcomed, but we'd like it if you could put it in the chat and we'll answer it at the end of the presentation. So speaking of feedback, once our proof of concept was in place, we were able to conduct a second round of user research, gaining feedback to be fed into the second phase of our project. The CTO of EV Charging, for example, which is a provider of EV charge points, said our tool would be very powerful and narrowing your shortlist down is a very manual and painful process. Examples like this validate that we're heading in the right direction. I'd also like to present a short video featuring Gemma Robinson from Hightrans, which I mentioned earlier, commenting on our prototype.
Where those areas are that you could easily add to, and where are the kind of higher connection costs, is incredibly useful. And I know that that's hours, weeks, months worth of work. It also tells you how much revenue maybe you could predict from that charger, or if indeed it might be one of those chargers that's not going to make a profit, but it's one that's important for the local authority network. Again, this speeds that process up and cuts down the cost so much that will be really useful in the future.
Brilliant.
Okay, I think the only other thing I'd say is how user-friendly you've made it. You know, I think it's really important. There'll be so many different users hoping to make use of it, and with various kind of backgrounds in EV infrastructure. So it's really user-friendly and intuitive, I'd say.
Right, so now I'm going to pass it back to Jonathan, who's going to tell you about how we can take our prototype further.
Thank you, Charlie. And next slide, please. Yeah, we definitely care about best standards and accessibility and usability. We're bringing together different industries. We're bringing together the whole energy industry as well. We need to make our system interoperable, and data standards have to be working so that everything flows. So we are following best practice wherever, everything we've done so far and going forward as well. Next slide, please, Charlie. We have validated that our application is complementary with the existing digital initiatives that are happening already. The really pleasing thing is that we're seen to be complementary. Other initiatives, they seem to stack up in a nice vertical stack. And the other thing that's come out is that we're being seen as very high velocity. Because we've got this spike through the problem space, we're able to move very, very, very quickly and get to value quickly. So we'll be in a position to acquire EV type data that's going to be valuable to all of the other digital layers that are happening in parallel. Next slide, please, Charlie. And keeping that drumbeat, moving into beta, we're focused on value, we're focused on delivering, and there's a couple of use cases which we are shaping up. The first is with Hitrans and with Strathclyde University, and that is to help them roll out the EV strategy for the northern region of Scotland. The second area is with fleet investors. Fleets have made a commitment to EV already. They need our application now. It really is now. So we are focusing on that as a high priority. And we want to say a big thank you to Scottish and Southern Electricity Networks and the wider SSE group have been absolutely fantastic in supporting us in everything we've been doing so far. So thank you to them. And next slide, please, Charlie. And we've got a route to commercialization, and we've talked a little bit about some of the early steps we're taking in beta, but we can see a long-term growth path for that. We have a menu of different commercialization options, which users say that they are happy with. It's the sort of thing they would pay for. We've got some things to iron out in beta to make that happen, but there's a definite path, and there's probably even a global path. The UK is a really good example of a country that's launched lots of brands that are operating in the role of market operator and market information operator for entire sectors. So we think we can do that as well. Next slide, please, Charlie. Which only leaves me to say thank you and ask you to stick your questions in the chat or shout them out. And a final thank you to the people of Ullapool who have allowed us to model their world. So thank you to them. And over to you, Fabio, if you're facilitating questions.
Thank you, Jonathan, Melanie, and Charlie, and the wider team. Well, we are open now for questions for the chat. I can start with some questions. Well, since you just mentioned your roadmap, and I know that Zuhlke is an international company, I was wondering if you have already identified some potential for scaling up this application in other countries, or is this something that...
Yes, we do. Particularly our fleet investor class of client, it's already a question for them, already a problem for them. So yes, part of our work in beta is to start to surface which of those international aspects that we can start to tickle up first and bring to bear, and that's why we've got to focus on fleet investors first, because absolutely internationalization is one of those things. But there are some things to bottom out around how that happens, but it's definitely part of our discussions at the moment.
Thank you, Jonathan. And yeah, and so we still have no questions in the chat, so I can go forward with my questions, to be fair. And so you have provided a nice demo, and also your platform has incredible capabilities. I'm wondering if you're also planning to build on some modeling capabilities, in the sense of not only providing information on where the potential charging points can be located, but also in terms of providing a list of optimal location for a potential project developer or infrastructure investor. So
So Fabio, it's Dan. Let me try and answer that question for you. It was in the presentation. We are providing private areas within the environment for customers of this to put their own data and build their own models.
Okay.
So the crucial thing is customers can come with their own IP and have a private area within the cloud in this environment to do what they need to do, and it's a protected environment for them. But they are then sitting on top of all the data that we have made available in the common good, if you like.
Okay. Thank you. And we have a question from Jonathan in the chat. John says, are they clear? So exciting to see Amazon interested for their e-fleet. Are they clear what they want to see from phase 2? And will this lead to revenue for you, or will you need further development?
So Amazon is an example of fleet that we are speaking to. So we are under commercial restrictions for the people that we are speaking to about exactly what we're doing around that. But the people that we are speaking to in various fleet operators are clear about what they require. So we know that. There is a bit of juggling around what they would want to pay for and what they wouldn't, which is why we have a menu of services, everything from subscription all the way through to consulting and bespoke offers. So we're able to move a product forwards at the same time as drive value for people that have got a very specific need. And we've already touched on one of those, which is internationalization, but there are others.
Thank you. And we have another question. It says, fragmented data landscape and collaboration with DNOs delays EV infrastructure development. What is your strategy for data acquisition moving forward, and how are you tackling these barriers?
So Fabio, I'll take that. It's Dan. So our strategy is one of show by doing, to use that as leverage with the other DNOs. So one of the reasons we credit SSEN as much as we do, and WPD would be in the mix here as well, is their availability of data is very good in the UK comparatively. The view that we've taken in terms of strategically is by showing with one of the two good ones how to do it, you effectively create leverage with the other DNOs. So we want to show value quickly. We picked and we worked with SSEN to show that value quickly. That's the strategic leverage we then hold over the other DNOs to open up their data against the presumed open stuff in EDTF.
Yeah, clear, yeah. And then there is another question that is connected to this point. It is, what would be your dream data set and why?
Honestly, from the energy network, it would be low voltage data in real time. And from the traffic data, it would be traffic movement data in real time, particularly journey length, has been alluded to. Understanding how long people have been driving before they stop is the other crucial bit of data. And then the final bit in the geography space that is clearly a problem for everybody is way leaves. So understanding how you drop an electrical cable from a power line into a charge point and the number of way leaves you need to get from landowners is the other crucial data point here. So yeah.